session because we're thrilled to present a fireside chat with one of India's most influential entrepreneurs who has just taken his company public. Yes, we're talking about Swiggy because recently Swiggy has partnered with the Government of India to launch a groundbreaking skilling initiative which is aimed at empowering India's workforce with essential skills and creating new employment opportunities.
Well, the Swiggy Skills Program is aligned with India's Viksit Bharat 2047 vision, and it reflects how Swiggy is shaping the future, not just through digital innovation, but through meaningful societal impact.
To take this discussion ahead, I invite Shireen Bhan back on stage to explore how this Swiggy Skills Program aligns with India's 2047 vision, empowering the workforce and creating opportunities that will contribute to India's long-term economic transformation.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Sriharsha Majety, the co-founder and group CEO of Swiggy. Shireen, over to you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to read out some numbers for you. This is on the back of what happened yesterday on Dalal Street, where we saw Swiggy quite literally deliver its IPO. So Harsha, it's great to have you here. 1 lakh crore rupees on day one of listing. That was the market cap that this gentleman and his team managed to deliver yesterday on Dalal Street. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Harsha and the team at Swiggy. 5,000 employees have become crorepathi's. 11,000 crore rupee IPO saw bids of over 40,000 crores. So once again, from all of us here, Harsha, congratulations. I'm not going to start by asking you about the numbers that you think I'm going to ask you about. What time did you finish partying last night?
4:30 a.m.
4:30 a.m. Was there a sense of relief at the end of it when you actually saw, when you were ringing the bell on the NSE? What was it? Relief? Excitement? What was going on at that point in time in your head?
Actually, it was relief and excitement in that order. 80% of the emotion was just relief. Having sold the dream, it was just a vision. And so many folks chose to join us along the way for the journey. So to see that new level of reality be unlocked was just huge relief and excitement as a founder. The second excitement is, I think, as a founder, it's also just a new life experience.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to figuring out how that stage looks. Now you can
You
only
know what
learn.
is going to change, right? You're going to have to talk to us every quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the business has gone through a million changes in the last 10 years. I think it can handle a few more.
I'm sure it can, and we look forward to having those conversations with you. But you know, we're talking about the relief that you felt yesterday as you rang the opening bell at the National Stock Exchange. But in the run-up to the IPO, and a lot of people, you know, we talk about this on stage, we'll ask you all questions about, are you ready to IPO, etc. It's not an event. There's a whole journey leading up to that event. And I want you to take us through what transpired over the last year plus, just to be IPO ready. And in that last lap, where the markets turned and suddenly sentiment was not on the side of you, you know, what was the feeling then? How much anxiety did you go through then?
I'll answer the second question first. I actually, honestly, had no anxiety
Really?
throughout. Because all the anxiety was until you choose to go, until you know inside that you're feeling ready for it. Because being ready means that you lose anxiety over so many other things that are outside your control. That's what I wanted to prepare for, and that's what my version of the company being ready was. And once we got there, truly, like, that was the big moment. All the anxiety, all the butterflies were till the decision. Once we felt like, okay, I think we're ready, let's go. After that, I think it's just, you know, wake up and do the best you can. I think we did a great job generally communicating our story in the investor roadshows. We were receptive to feedback that we got on pricing, a bunch of things. So we don't like look back and think of anything that we would change about how we went about it. And that was 90% of our decision. Now, obviously, some of this timing tailwinds can be even more useful. But if you think about it, from the day we started our roadshow, the markets just kept going in a certain direction. That wasn't
Down.
Yeah, that was down. Yeah, absolutely. So, but we just powered on. We were like, I think the company is ready. I mean, even if, let's say, things are tepid on day one, week one, I mean, it's a long run.
Yeah.
So luckily, I think none of us tethered our emotions at all to what that day one price is going to be, though it's a good thing, a good outcome, a great outcome in hindsight, just on day one, good aftertaste. But we know that you can't do this perfectly. So to end up on the right side of it is a good feeling.
Absolutely, and I would imagine that it's a good feeling for all of you at Swiggy and your bankers as well. But let's talk about that. I was talking to SoftBank about getting the pricing right, and I think this has been one of the issues we've seen with a lot of startup founders and a lot of startup IPOs, where the pricing has left nothing on the table for the retail investor. You did. And you decided to bring down the price because you wanted to leave enough on the table for the retail investor. That decision and making that call, take us through what was going on when you did that.
I think we were clear all along, Shireen, throughout the process. I think if I had to look back and talk about maybe the two major objectives that we were going for, to get a high quality set of investors who believe in our story and want to be there for the long term, that was number one. And eliminate event risk, that was point one. The number two was we were greedy for a good aftertaste. It's the beginning of the journey for a lot of new investors who are going to come on board. So honestly, the conversations lasted a few minutes. It wasn't...
And it was done.
Yeah, it was done. Honestly, this could have gone another way. I mean, a few more hours and we may have not priced very well. But that's like everything changes in a few weeks. So we're lucky we were able to price it in hindsight, but there's no way to fully know it before going ahead with it.
Well, let's now talk about the road ahead, Harsha. And you've done enough of investor road shows, and you've probably gone over those numbers in great detail. So what I want to get from you is the big picture. What is changing in India as far as consumption is concerned, as far as consumer behavior is concerned, about the capacity to spend? What are the big shifts, the structural shifts that you're betting on? What gives you hope? What gives you confidence?
Absolutely. So I think if you play it out over a couple of decades, we're playing that kind of consumption story in India. I think everything that Swiggy does today, broadly in urban convenience, caters to the top 120, 130 million consumers in the country, or 150. We've gotten about 100 plus in food ever transacted. But I think that is only going to go up, up, up. If the country's economic growth is going to be strong, GDP per capita is expected to be good, we ride on rails that benefit significantly from these categories, from these tailwinds. For example, like if, let's say, the GDP per capita goes up, discretionary income falls first into the restaurant industry where we're building on top of.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have the opportunity of a lifetime to be building these categories at this specific time in India. And we couldn't be more thrilled. So we're just blessed to have an opportunity like that. And we think that consumers, the one thing that maybe now we've learned even more is their expectations just keep expanding. They just keep going higher and higher. And now we're starting to look at consumers wanting things in 10 minutes, but now it's also wanting a lot more things in 10 minutes, and maybe even like wanting their food in 10 minutes. So consumer expectations just tend to keep expanding. That's the one constant.
And that's an opportunity, but that's also a significant disruption that's happened as far as consumer expectations is concerned, as well as the fulfillment expectations when you're dealing with these consumers. As you said, now food in 10 minutes. I mean, how soon is that likely to be a reality, and how much pressure is there now to move down that road?
Well, when you say pressure, what kind of pressure? I think if users want it, then companies need to innovate.
Deliver.
Yeah, I think you just have to keep matching the users' expectations with any luck, beat their expectations even before they didn't know they wanted it. So there's no pressure. I mean, you just have to do it. If consumers want it, then you have to build the future.
So, speaking about building the future, and I think the quick commerce story was written off. The quick commerce story has made a phenomenal comeback in the last 2 years on the back of what you and Blinkit, etc., have been able to do. And it's being held up as the India story, the India playbook. It hasn't worked anywhere else in the world, or not as good as it has worked out in India. Why do you think that's the case?
So, Shireen, there are many, many reasons for it. I think one of the big reasons could be that the physical version of what quick commerce does not exist in India. At some level, I think if you look at how retail has moved in every other geography, because they have big box retailers, then they have modern trade retailers, and then they have corner shops, etc. I think here the equivalent of what we do is actually the modern trade, which is meaningful but never got built out in the way that it got
Yeah.
built out in other parts of the world. So there's a real opportunity that just, it's like almost like a pager movement that we didn't see enough of. So what we think is probably quick commerce caught modern trade very, very early on in the Indian retail journey, and it just offered consumers an opportunity to leapfrog into something that just comes to their
So
home.
the lines now, the lines between quick commerce and e-commerce, I mean, you know, as you said, it started with low ticket size items,
Yeah.
but now you're pretty much doing just about everything. I mean,
Yeah.
or close to everything. I mean, are there going to be any boundaries to what you can do on quick commerce, or is it now e-commerce?
Yeah, I think there aren't that many boundaries. If users are getting used to the platform, they want more and more selection, and they keep searching for it. I mean, the way users also search as they see more and more is a very interesting phenomena. Like maybe in year one, you know, batteries would have been like,
Yeah.
a type of battery would have been the one that the consumers wanted to search.
What
3
is it
months-
today?
Bed sheets was 3 months back.
Bed
Was the
sheets.
most searched, like let's say, most searched with less selection than what consumers wanted. So that's an example. Like you would wonder why people want bed sheets in 10 minutes, but they want it. They wanted a bed sheet, and if it could be available in 10 minutes, then they want it. So I think we will see the expansion of this imagination. Consumers are going to keep asking for more and more. Will all of it, will the entire world be available in 10 minutes? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I think there is a continuum, and all of us in the category are figuring out how to extend that continuum and figure out the paradigm that blurs the lines even more.
So how large will these pipes be? I mean, you've already built them out significantly to be able to go from, you know, batteries to bed sheets. What are we talking about now in the next few years?
It's very, almost everything that can fit in a reasonably sized vehicle near you.
Will be shipped in 10 minutes.
Should be shipped. I mean, I don't know for about 10 minutes. I think we will see some iterations on the operating model that you can't get millions of things in 10 minutes. There's no way that is possible.
You know, I want to go back to the comment that you made yesterday while you were ringing the bell, saying that this was a germ of an idea, which is today this now listed entity with a market cap when you listed at 1 lakh crore rupees. What did it take, Harsha, to go from a germ of an idea to building out Swiggy to what it is in terms of culture, in terms of purpose, in terms of vision, in terms of strategy? What has been the most challenging aspect of putting Swiggy together?
I think the business in general, that's the good news, because it also creates some barriers to entry. It's pretty punishing. There are so many moving parts every single day in every single zone. But honestly, I think my challenge as a founder, building in all of these businesses, super competitive, can be cutthroat sometimes. But the most challenging is to take as many people along as you can. It's not always easy, but to choose that path of win-win every single time is the biggest challenge. And it keeps increasing as the company gets larger, and that's what we need to buck up for.
Well, speaking of win-win, you know, Zomato tweeted when you were listing yesterday with a little heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely from that.
Yes, a very nice gesture. But, you know, how competitive is it getting now? I mean, it's between the two of you, there's Zepto and there's everybody else now that's looking at getting into the 10-minute space as well. So how competitive is it?
I think, look, Swiggy was born in the middle of a war. In 2014, we were like the 19th player in food delivery that showed up. So we've seen this even
So
in
you're
food
used to battles.
Sorry?
You're used to battles.
Yeah, we've seen them through. Like, I can't remember the last year or two where it felt like a little bit of calm. So we don't know any other world. So that we're used to. But I think in quick commerce particularly, it'll be a little different from food delivery because the market size is just way larger than the food delivery category. So there will be multiple players, multiple competitors vying for a dominant share to be that top 3-4 platforms that will be there in the next 4-5 years once this plays out. So competition will be there, should be there for a market this large.
But do you think it'll be the rule of 3 that's likely to apply, or do you think
No
that there's
idea.
going to be space for more?
I mean, 3, 4, that's as far as I can imagine. Maybe more than that feels harder unless there's a new unlock on the market size.
So, you said that you're used to battle. You were born at the time of a war. What does it take to go to battle every day? In terms of temperament, in terms of mindset, in terms of how you operate, how are you battle ready every day?
I think I'm not a big fight-driven mindset. I just don't operate like that. I think the way we've gone about our problems is to just figure out what you can do for the consumer better, and that energizes you, and then that eventually gets you to do better. But directly thinking about this person, I know I need to beat them, is just not a way that has excited us as a company. Whatever success we've had, it's by figuring out a way to energize ourselves indirectly.
So what is energizing you today? What's inspiring you today? Outside of course, the fact that you're now a listed entity. That's done.
Yeah. No, I'm just really, really energized by this next wave of, what we can do for two reasons. One, in the short term, I'm really excited and curious about our life as a public company. The first 1-2 years are going to be very different once you get a hang of how this is. So there's that childlike curiosity that we'll have about this for the next few quarters.
Do you feel at all like it's going to constrain you?
No, I mean, like I said, I think the decision to go public was made after feeling comfortable that it won't constrain. So that was the longest period. I took probably 4 to 6 quarters to come to peace with the decision in the first place. So then I had a lot of this torment. Will I be able to do it? How will this work? Then you're also looking at our peer companies and their trials and tribulations in the stock exchanges. And then you have to live through that vicariously, and then you're like, yeah, I think this too shall pass. We'll see it.
Are you on Twitter or off Twitter?
I am on Twitter, absolutely. I am a content reader. I'm not much of a producer, but
so now as a listed entity, are you putting boundaries for what you will or will not say on Twitter?
So far, we haven't gotten that feedback from the investors to be on Twitter. But we will definitely be there on quarterly calls talking about our story transparently, the goods, the bads, everything. So, yeah, we'll be there. So definitely we will be out there talking about what we're up to.
You talked about the goods, the bads, the trials and tribulations. And as you sit here today, the journey to many people in this room and to many young entrepreneurs who are looking at you probably looks like, we can do it too. It's not that hard to do. Let's talk about some of the tough stuff. Let's talk about some of the lonely moments. Let's talk about some of the sort of emotionally traumatic times that you've had to go through just in order for you to be able to build this out and build this out at scale.
Yeah, look, I think 2020 to 23 was probably our toughest time. In a 10-year journey, I think those 3 years taught a lot to the company. I think in 2020, as we were just finishing off an investment calendar, that was huge in food delivery, fighting off many competitors. I think as soon as the pandemic began, just months into the calendar finishing and we were moving to get the business profitable, the business fell down to 10-15% of its volume. Just 3 months after you finished your investment calendar. So at that time, it just felt incredibly hard. It's incredibly punishing. And imposter syndrome and, self-doubt and all of those.
But never, no, this is no longer the road to take.
No. I think I just love the overall mission statement of the company so much that that is enough to overcome any of these
Doubt
trials and tribulations.
And imposter syndrome.
Yeah. No, I mean imposter syndrome as well, yeah. I mean, see, imposter syndrome is a different one. That is just me. But the company is the company. So, yeah, that's perfectly fine. I think we'll just keep choosing this road because we love this road. We think India needs it. I talked about it even in our IPO speech yesterday. I genuinely believe that the next 2 decades are going to be incredible for Indian consumers, India's economic growth. But I think we should not just get economic growth. We should enjoy it. And I think with a little bit of Swiggy in our consumers' lives, I think we can also enjoy economic growth. And I think that's a powerful feeling. It's not just delivering food or delivering grocery. I think we power a lot of dreams indirectly by not having to do the things that maybe you didn't need to. And that is not lost on me. Every time, maybe, especially it's a high frequency incidents in Bangalore, you're out there, you're seeing the traffic out there sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh God, I love what we're doing. And given how high frequency traffic is in Bangalore, then I have many moments to thank
Swiggy.
what we're doing, our role, in helping shape the India of the next 2 decades.
Well, you certainly are helping shape the India of the next 2 decades. But, I also want to understand from you, in terms of the community that's built around companies like yours, the delivery partners and so on and so forth. And it's punishing and grueling being on Indian roads in our weather conditions, with traffic being what it is. I mean, how do you bring joy into their lives as well? I mean, do you think about that?
Oh, 100%. I think when I said win-win, I think without the ecosystem being happy, I don't think companies can run for too long. And absolutely, I think every day we wake up, we have to keep figuring out how to, grow driver earnings by a certain level, how to improve the ease of doing the job, how to eliminate support issues, tickets. All of these are big pain points. So that's an everyday living, breathing thing. I mean, even if you look at, let's say, some of the surveys on Fair Work, etc., we've done really, really well. And that's because we actually spend a lot of time figuring out how to make lives better. But honestly, the whole platform workers or gig economy is all of 12, 13 years old. Compared to traditional employment, that is probably like tens of thousands of years old, if not even longer. So I think along the way, this is the 0 to 1 of, let's say, how this works. So as companies in this space, we're also learning every year how to do this better, that better. But we're absolutely on it. Not a day goes by without thinking about this.
Not a day goes by without thinking about it. So the next 5-year vision, Harsha, for Swiggy, the new opportunities as well as the priorities.
I think the next 5 years are, again, going to be a little bit more of the same. We now, between the 3 businesses that we have, food delivery, Instamart, and Dine Out, I think each of them have very strong growth headroom for the next 5 years. I think it'll take a lot more innovation to pop open new use cases, make things more affordable for consumers. That's one train. The stuff that is in flight, I think you'll see a lot more of innovation to pop open new use cases. That coming from our stable for sure. And I think in terms of new businesses, we're always tinkering and putting new stuff out there. Even earlier this year, we launched something called Rare. It's in private beta in Bangalore. But again, everything you see coming out of our stable speaks to the mission statement. We wanted it to be a little bit more of a private members club that is hyper convenience for a smaller part of the audience that we operate in. So everything that you see keeps aligning to this mission statement of unparalleled convenience for urban Indians. So even the next 5 years will be the same, I have no doubt.
Are you taking a break?
No.
No?
I can't
Back to
wait
work.
to get back to work now.
Harsha, it's been an absolute pleasure. Congratulations once again to you and
Thank
the
you
team
so
at
much,
Swiggy.
Sherry.
Thank you very, very much for joining us here this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of
Thank you
applause
so much.
to Sri Harsha
Thank you.
Majety and the team at Swiggy. Thank you very, very much.